Well, hello everyone. Ogre27 Kane here today, and we're going to do a review of Onimusha Warlords for the Nintendo Switch. Let's do a little bit of an overview and figure out what we're talking about today. So this game came out way back in 2001 on the PlayStation 2. This is my first experience on the PlayStation 2, and it blew my mind. At the time, I was just coming off the chunky old PS1 and N64 graphics. This game looked all too real to me. Yeah, it's had a little bit of age now, and my daughters have made comments about how the voices don't match their mouths and the graphics are a little chunky now. But that doesn't bother me one bit. This is one of my favorite games on that console, and I really think you should check this out. I picked up the Japanese version, as it was never released in America physically, but the Japanese version does come complete with English on the cartridge. That's both spoken and text, so it's a pretty big boost for me. Now, if you enjoy the Onimusha games, there are two other ones that you can play on the old PS2 and Xbox as well, but this is my favorite out of all of them. This game stands up. Let's hit the gameplay first. The gameplay in this is very reminiscent of Resident Evil. It's essentially Resident Evil in medieval Japan. Now, the game has a lot of horror elements to it, but it is essentially an action game at heart. It sees you traversing a medieval castle and searching for this Princess Yuki. You're going through defeating demons and trying to discover what the plot and plan is. The game takes place during Nobunaga's reign, or his ambitions of conquering Japan, and the game really puts forward an emphasis on Samanosuke and his hero-ship, or rather his saviorship of the princess, and, for lack of a better word, Japan itself. Now, the general loop has you running around the castle, killing monsters, solving puzzles, acquiring new swords and upgrades and magics for them, and using them to get through essentially locked pathways to get through the castle. The game's not very long, and you can beat this entire thing in about 3 to 5 hours, 100%ing it if you will. But that doesn't take anything away from its replayability. I've probably played this game through 20 times in my lifetime. It's almost a yearly play. And it's kind of crazy to go back and look at how the way that stuff used to work, because when we got this game brand new for $60 back then, no one was complaining about that length. The game was well made, and the story fits very nicely into what it's trying to accomplish. There's no excess, no garbage, nothing else. So, let's move on to the next category, the story. So the story in this sees Samanosuke trying to rescue Princess Yuki from forces he doesn't really understand from and why. As you go through the game, you meet up with these ogres you're seeing here on screen, and they give him this gauntlet, which allows him the ability and power to defeat the demons and trap their souls within it. He can then utilize their power to upgrade his weapons and his magics to get further in and kill bigger and stronger demons. The story itself fits well into the gameplay loop because they go hand in hand. There's not a lot of other things that they really put into this, and not a lot more that I can really spoil, because frankly I'm showing off almost a third to half of the game just in this quick little 10-minute video here. It's not long, and the story itself is pretty well contained, and you will see some characters come and go, and some characters are more important than others, but for the most part, you're following Samanosuke. The other games have their own gameplay loops and they expand upon this, but this story is self-contained within this one game. The game does use a lot of historically based characters though, so if you're a history buff, you'll enjoy it. Let's do controls and audio now. So the controls in this game are very similar to Resident Evil. They used to have a tank control scheme, but thankfully with this newest port, they've upgraded the controls and you have a few more options. You can't really change much, but they do show them off in the options menu and you can look at them and figure out which one works best for you. I prefer the general controls, but running from scene to scene can get a little annoying as your character will flop back and forth between screens. All that aside though, I'm happy with it. Let's talk about audio. The audio in this game is really good for when it came out. Now, if you hear it today, which you'll hear in just a second, it's really rough. This was a AAA game at the time, but if it came out now, it would barely make AA. The voice acting is very stiff and static, and it's kinda comical. Let's go ahead and take a listen.
Huh? Didn't know humans could be such pests? Where is the princess?
How could I die? By the hand of a human!
Be quiet, monster. It is time for you to go back to the underworld.
Combat's up now, and frankly, this is the highlight of the game for me. I really enjoy the combat in this game. It's a very simple system. It's essentially you have an attack, no dodge, you have a block, and you have magic. Your magic attacks are way overpowered, and you can pretty much throw anything off in this game, and it really pushes you to utilize that. But it's not everything, and if you really want to move around and try to do your best to get through the area, you can. You can dodge enemies and not even fight them. But I really highly recommend getting to know your sword pretty well. You have 3 different weapons, and they have each 3 different magics. You upgrade the magics and the weapons independently from each other, as the magics are what you use as keys to open doors. Now, if you enjoy a slower paced combat, more of a methodical style, then you'll probably really enjoy this. But be aware, there's a lot of cheap attacks and a lot of cheap deaths that you'll go through because enemies will hit you in the middle of an animation. Another cool thing that I need to mention about combat in this is how the combat really makes you learn your enemies and learn where they are. You can't really just run up and tank everything in spite of not having a dodge. You have to get good with your block, and if you move out of the way of an enemy just as they're attacking, you can do a power attack to them. And this is really helpful on some of the later enemies that will push you. So let's move on now to the next category, graphics and animations. So yes, this is a PS2 game, and it still looks like it. But frankly, I'm really happy with what they did. They didn't try to remake it, they didn't try to change anything. They just gave us an exact 1-to-1 remake with a upgraded resolution and frame rate. The frame rate in the original game was kind of choppy, but it worked well enough. This game is a very, very smooth, I believe, locked 30. It runs at a true 1080p, even though it shows its age now, and you can see the lines in the characters' faces and where the polygons break and where they move. But it looks good on a new TV, and the backgrounds are very, very well drawn too. The artwork in this game stands out, and the game really will bring you back to its time period. They did a fantastic job with it. Now, if you played this on the PS2, you probably remember that they were a little grainy playing on those old fuzzy tube TVs. So seeing all this upgraded in this way is really honestly a surprise to me. And I really had no idea how much detail they had put into the environments on this game until I saw it in this state. It really is beautiful. So the animation quality is also really good in this considering its age. All of the enemies have their own unique movement patterns, and they're all recognizable, and the bosses are very well done. They really push you to learn and understand what they're doing. I enjoyed every aspect of this, so let's move on now and touch the conclusion. So to be honest, whenever they port one of these old PS2 or GameCube games up to the current generation, I'm old school. I prefer these 1-to-1s. I think this is what the game really truly deserves. If they wanted to give us a remake, so be it. But thank God they gave us the original version in all of its entirety. Yes, it was annoying having to import it from Japan to get this game physically, but thankfully, like I said, English is on the cartridge, both voice acted and in text, so it won't disappoint you in any way. The game's fairly cheap, I believe, still running around $40. But considering it's not a large region print, I don't really expect it to last forever. So thank you for watching today's video. It was a blast to make. I upload every single Monday. If you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe, and have a great rest of your day. This is Ogre27 Kane signing out.